So, Michael, we're just a few days away from the big day. Um, so, tell us what's happening in the story at this point.
Mary is pregnant and
Very pregnant,
very pregnant. That's a good point.
ready to pop.
Um, yeah, pretty much. Um, and they're staying in an inn and not with their family.
And of course, the scriptures are pretty silent about Joseph. We They say a lot more about his lineage, like in
Yeah, he's
Matthew.
kind of a mysterious figure. Definitely back then when it was more conservative, if you had married someone who was already pregnant, that's potentially really embarrassing or humiliating because your whole family might, especially in this case, are going to think things that just aren't true. Like you didn't wait until marriage or you married someone who got pregnant from somebody else. And either one of those, especially back then, was probably pretty frowned upon. And you definitely wouldn't want to stay with family.
She's very pregnant and she's not supposed to be pregnant yet. And yeah, maybe Joseph was just embarrassed. Maybe he doesn't have to explain it to every relative again and again. Plus, they're not going to believe him anyway, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, why try to explain something that is so outlandish and crazy that everyone's just going to think you're crazy or trying to come up with lies to excuse your failure.
My kids would complain when they'd come back from college or they'd visit home and go to church and they'd get the same set of questions from everybody at church, and they'd have to say the same things over and over again. And it wasn't even embarrassing stuff. Like it was more
it's just the same thing 20 times in a row.
Like, how's college? And then, or whatever. But now they're like, wow, didn't you guys just get married, or aren't you getting married next week? And why is she's like not just pregnant, she's about to have a baby? What happened? And yeah, maybe Joseph is avoiding that. And Michael, have you ever avoided family?
Now,
my sister, by the way. Yeah.
Yes. Right now, I'm actually on great relations with, I think, my entire direct family. And the only time I can think of where I was in bad relations with a family member, probably like when I was like 7 or something. And, my older sister, Monica, she's one of the best people you could meet now. But at the time, she was a horrible 12-year-old that hated me and I hated her. And so that, I think that's the only time in my entire life that I've hated one of my family members.
That's funny. So when you were 7, you might have wanted to stay at the inn instead of at the house. Talk about the concept of us being looked down upon because of our affiliation with Jesus, if that makes any sense.
I think that's one of the things that it's kind of difficult. Like I have a lot of secular friends, and it's really difficult to talk about God in general, just because it is kind of the same thing. They don't believe you. They think you're making things up, or they just think you're stupid for believing something like that.
Well, it's remarkable that Jesus himself was despised and rejected. And you'd think the author of all life, including us, would be immediately awed and respected. But it's that same paradox that while he was here, he was despised and rejected. And this song by Handel sort of celebrates that, the nature of the creator being cast off by his creation. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So the psalm we've chosen is sort of an escape psalm. Like it tells us that David was the writer, and of course there were times that David had to flee or run away from people. And at one point in the psalm, he talks about how he wishes he could just fly away.
Psalm 55, 5-8. Fear and trembling have beset me. Horror has overwhelmed me. I said, oh, that I had the wings of a dove. I would fly away and be at rest. I would flee far away and stay in the desert. I would hurry to my place of shelter, far from the tempest and storm. I think it's really interesting that he wants to flee and stay in the desert. You'd think that that'd be the last place someone would want to go to. But if you think about it, it's kind of a desolate place, but nobody's going to go there. You're going to be alone. Nobody's even going to follow you there if they see you go.
Mm-hmm.
So they're willing to brave the desert just to hide from everything that's chasing them. I bet Joseph was probably 2 things. One, probably really excited because his wife is giving birth to Jesus, to the Savior, but he also would have to be trusting in God a lot. There's a lot of things that was going to happen that he had no clue about, a lot of steps that had to be taken that he probably couldn't see at all. And I mean, where do you go from where they were, from giving birth to the Son of God? It's just a massive, it's almost like he's having to step into God's shoes in a way, trying to lead his son, which would be a pretty terrifying and cool, I think.
Jesus had two fathers.
Yeah.